Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a forest. You're probably picturing tall trees, maybe some birds chirping, sunlight filtering through leaves. Beautiful, peaceful, right? Now, what if I told you that the forest you're imagining is actually engaged in a conversation right now? Not metaphorically, actually talking. And what's more shocking, every single breath you take while lying in bed tonight contains molecules that were recently inside a tree thousands of miles away. And that tree is chemically aware you exist. I know that sounds impossible, but in 1997, a Canadian forest ecologist named Dr. Suzanne Simard discovered something that shattered everything we thought we knew about forests. She found an underground network connecting trees, a wood wide web, where mother trees actually recognize their own offspring and send them nutrients through fungal networks. Trees, it turns out, have something remarkably similar to intelligence. And tonight, as you drift off to sleep, I'm going to share with you the most mind-bending, reality-shifting facts about forests that will change how you see every tree you ever encounter again. But here's what's truly extraordinary about what you're about to learn. Forests don't just exist on Earth. The same patterns, the same networks, the same strange behaviors we see in forests appear in your brain, in galaxies, in the internet itself. By the end of tonight, you'll understand why ancient people worshipped forests as living gods, because in ways we're only beginning to understand, they actually are. But before we step into this forest together, do me a favor. If you're already feeling that tingle of curiosity, hit that like button. And subscribe, because I promise you, by the time we're done tonight, your relationship with nature will never be the same. Also, I'm genuinely curious. Drop a comment telling me what country you're listening from and what time it is where you are right now. I love knowing that someone in Tokyo might be falling asleep to the same words someone in Brazil is waking up to. There's something beautiful about that connection, much like the forests we're about to explore. Let's start with something simple that will gently shift your perspective. Right now, as you breathe in, you're inhaling oxygen. You know that. What you might not know is exactly where that oxygen came from. About 28% of the oxygen on Earth comes from rainforests. The Amazon alone produces roughly 20% of our planet's oxygen. But here's where it gets interesting. That oxygen molecule you just breathed in, it was created by a tree through photosynthesis, possibly this morning, possibly yesterday. But the truly remarkable thing is this. A single mature oak tree produces enough oxygen in 1 year to support 2 human beings. Think about that. 1 tree, 2 humans, 1 year. You quite literally owe your life to trees you've never met, in forests you've never visited. Now let's go deeper. In 1968, a scientist named Dr. Art Galston was studying how plants respond to their environment. What he discovered still seems like science fiction. Plants can see in their own way. They have photoreceptors that detect not just light and dark, but specific wavelengths of color. They can sense when you're near them because you block light. They know when seasons change not just by temperature, but by measuring the exact length of each day. But the foundation of forest magic begins underground, in a place you can't see. Beneath your feet, every forest is threaded with mycorrhizal networks, essentially fungal internet cables connecting tree to tree. These aren't just random connections. They're sophisticated information highways that forests use to communicate, share resources, and make collective decisions. Think of it like this. Imagine if every person in your city was connected by an invisible network where you could share not just information, but actual energy and nutrients. If you were starving, your neighbor could send you food directly through underground tubes. If you were sick, the whole community would know and send medicine. That's what's happening in a forest right now. Every forest everywhere. Dr. Suzanne Simard, who I mentioned earlier, spent years mapping these networks in Canadian forests. What she found was stunning. Older mother trees can be connected to hundreds of younger trees. And they don't just randomly distribute nutrients. They actually favor their own offspring, sending them more carbon and nutrients than unrelated trees. Trees recognize their own children. Let that sink in as you drift off tonight. Here's something that will recalibrate your understanding of what awareness means. Forests remember. In 2013, Dr. Monica Gagliano at the University of Western Australia conducted an experiment that sounds simple but has profound implications. She trained Mimosa pudica plants, those plants whose leaves fold up when you touch them, by dropping them repeatedly. At first, the plants closed their leaves with each drop, a defensive response. But after multiple drops where nothing bad happened, the plants learned it was safe and stopped closing their leaves. Now here's the part that should make you pause. Those plants remembered that lesson for over a month. A month without a brain, without neurons. A plant held a memory longer than many people remember what they had for breakfast last Tuesday. But forest memory goes deeper and darker than individual learning. When a caterpillar starts eating a leaf, the tree doesn't just react to that damage. It releases specific chemical signals into the air. Neighboring trees detect these chemicals and immediately start producing bitter-tasting compounds in their own leaves, making themselves unappetizing before they're even attacked. They're warning each other. Danger coming from the east. Brace yourselves. What if I told you that trees can also remember seasons from years ago? In 2016, researchers in Finland discovered that trees have what amounts to a memory of harsh winters. A tree that experienced an unusually cold winter 3 years ago will prepare for winter earlier than trees that didn't experience that cold, even if the intervening winters were mild. The tree literally remembers trauma. Think of it like PTSD, but for trees. A forest that experienced drought 5 years ago will ration water more conservatively than a forest that hasn't faced drought. Even when rain is abundant, the forest remembers suffering. As you close your eyes tonight, imagine this. Every old-growth forest is essentially a living library of climate history, of every frost, every drought, every perfect growing season for centuries. The trees around you are historians, recording in their very wood the biography of Earth. And here's what will blow your mind before we continue. Scientists recently discovered that this memory can be passed to the next generation. Beech trees that experienced drought produced seeds that grew into seedlings already primed to be more drought-resistant even when those seedlings never experienced drought themselves. Trees pass down learned survival strategies to their offspring. Forests have transgenerational memory. Now let's talk about why forests make you feel calm, and the answer is more precise than you might imagine. There's actual mathematics to forest peace. In the 1980s, a Japanese researcher named Dr. Yoshifumi Miyazaki pioneered what's called forest bathing, or Shinrin-yoku. But this wasn't just poetic wellness stuff. He measured it. When you walk in a forest, your cortisol levels drop by an average of 12.4% within 15 minutes. Your pulse rate decreases by 6%. Your blood pressure drops measurably. But why? What's the mechanism? The answer takes us into the strange world of phytoncides organic compounds that trees release into the air. Coniferous trees like pine, cedar, and spruce emit these chemicals as part of their defense system against bacteria and insects. When you breathe them in, something remarkable happens in your body. Dr. Ching Li, from the Nippon Medical School in Tokyo, discovered in 2007 that inhaling phytoncides increases your natural killer cells, the white blood cells that fight tumors and infections by 50%. That boost lasts for a month after a single forest visit. You literally become healthier, stronger, more resilient by breathing forest air. But there's something even more mathematically beautiful happening. In 1975, a mathematician named Benoit Mandelbrot described something called fractal patterns shapes that repeat at different scales. A tree branch splits into smaller branches that split into even smaller branches, all following the same pattern. This self-similarity, this fractal nature, appears everywhere in forests. And here's the stunning part. Your brain is wired to find fractals relaxing. Studies using EEG machines show that when people look at fractal patterns, like tree branches, fern leaves, or forest canopies, their brains produce alpha waves, the same waves associated with wakeful relaxation and meditation. Think of it like this. Your eyes evolved in forests. For 99% of human history, we lived among trees. Your visual cortex, your neural architecture, is literally designed to process forest patterns. When you look at a forest, you're not just seeing nature, you're seeing the environment your brain was built for. You're coming home. This is why a concrete city exhausts you, while a forest restores you. The harsh geometry of buildings, the straight lines and sharp angles, your brain has to work to process those. But the fractal complexity of a forest? That's your brain's native language. You can relax because your visual system doesn't have to try. It just understands. As you drift towards sleep tonight, picture those fractal branches, endlessly dividing, each one a smaller version of the larger whole. Your own lungs branch the same way. So do your blood vessels. So do your neurons. You're not just similar to a forest, you're built with the same mathematical principles. You and the trees are speaking the same language, written in the same equations. Now we're going to shift your perception of time itself. Close your eyes and feel this. Every inhale, every exhale, you're operating on human time seconds, minutes, hours. But forests operate on a completely different timescale, and understanding this will change everything about how you experience patience, growth, and your own life. The oldest living tree on Earth is a Great Basin bristlecone pine in California named Methuselah. It's 4,853 years old. Think about that number. When that tree was a sapling, humans hadn't invented the wheel yet. The pyramids of Egypt didn't exist. Humans were just figuring out agriculture. That single tree has been alive for the entire span of recorded human history. But individual trees are just the beginning. In Utah, there's an organism called Pondo, a colony of genetically identical quaking aspen trees connected by a single root system. The entire colony is one organism, and it's estimated to be 80,000 years old. Pondo was alive when Neanderthals still walked the earth. Dr. Charles Darwin himself noted something profound about trees in his later writings. They challenge our very definition of an individual. When a tree's branch touches the ground and takes root, growing into a new trunk, is that a new tree or the same tree? When trees graft their roots together underground and share a circulatory system, where does one tree end and another begin? Here's what will shift your perspective. Forests don't experience time the way you do. A year to you is a massive chunk of your life. You might live 80 years if you're lucky. A year to a 2,000-year-old sequoia is like 2 hours to you. The anxiety you feel about time passing? That's a human problem. Trees exist in deep time, but time in forests gets even stranger. In 2014, researchers discovered that trees can anticipate the future. Before a drought arrives, trees start growing deeper roots and smaller leaves, preparing for water scarcity. How? They're reading environmental cues so subtle, we can barely measure them: minute changes in day length, temperature patterns, soil moisture trends. Trees are prediction machines, constantly calculating probable futures. Think of it like this. You worry about tomorrow, maybe next week if you're a planner. A tree is simultaneously processing what happened 50 years ago, what's happening now, and what will probably happen in the next decade. Past, present, and future exist together in tree time. This is why forests are so relaxing. When you're among trees, you're surrounded by beings for whom your entire life is a brief moment. Your deadline at work. A tree doesn't even register time that short. Your anxiety about aging? Irrelevant on the time scale of a forest. The trees are teaching you something profound. Slow down. You have time. More time than you think. Now we're going to explore something that might seem contradictory to everything I've said about forest peace. But stay with me, because this darkness is part of the magic. Forests are also battlefields, and understanding the conflict makes the peace more profound. In 1977, ecologist Dr. Daniel Jansen described what he called plant warfare, the sophisticated chemical weapons plants use against each other. Black walnut trees produce a compound called juglone that leaches into the soil and prevents other plants from growing near them. It's chemical warfare, a strategy to eliminate competition for water and nutrients. But the violence goes deeper. The aptly named strangler fig starts life high in the canopy, a seed deposited by a bird. The seedling sends roots down the host tree's trunk to the ground. Over decades, those roots grow and fuse, eventually forming a cage that literally strangles the host tree to death. When the host finally rots away, the strangler fig remains, a hollow tower that killed to reach the light. Trees compete with unimaginable ferocity for sunlight. In a dense forest, there's something called the canopy layer, the top level where the tallest trees spread their leaves. Below that is the understory, where less light penetrates. And below that, the forest floor, where only 1 to 2% of the sunlight reaches. It's a vertical battlefield where every plant is fighting desperately to climb higher, to reach the light. Some trees cheat. Some grow incredibly fast in their youth, racing upward with soft, weak wood, risking everything for a chance to reach sunlight before their neighbors. Others play the long game, growing slowly with dense, strong wood, waiting for a neighbor to fall and create a gap in the canopy they can exploit. But here's where it gets psychologically complex. The same forest that's a battlefield is also a community. Those mother trees sharing nutrients with their offspring? They're helping, yes, but they're also creating loyalty. Strong offspring means their genetic legacy continues. It's simultaneously generous and strategic. Dr. Peter Wolleben, a German forester who wrote The Hidden Life of Trees in 2015, describes forests as having social systems that rival human communities in complexity. There are alliances, betrayals, partnerships, and exploitation. Old trees sometimes refuse to share nutrients with certain younger trees. Nobody knows why. Politics, essentially. Think of it like this. A forest is like a city where everyone is simultaneously cooperating and competing. Your neighbors help you sometimes, compete with you for jobs and resources other times. The forest is peaceful, not because there's no conflict, but because the conflict is balanced, regulated, part of a larger system. And this is why forests are the perfect thing to fall asleep thinking about. They teach you that life contains multitudes, beauty and brutality, cooperation and competition, peace and struggle, all existing together. The forest doesn't pretend everything is perfect. It just finds balance. As you sink deeper into rest, imagine that balance. The trees above fighting for light while sharing nutrients below. Every organism taking what it needs while giving back what others require. It's not perfect harmony, it's dynamic equilibrium, and that's actually more beautiful. Let me tell you something that will change how you hear the world. Forests are never silent. You think of them as quiet, peaceful places, but they're actually filled with sounds you can't hear, sounds that matter deeply. In 2012, researcher Dr. Monica Gagliano, yes, the same scientist who proved plants have memory, made a discovery that sounds like science fiction. She played sounds to plant roots a crackling noise at 220 hertz, the frequency of water moving through soil. The roots grew toward the sound. Even when there was no actual water, just the recording, the roots believed the sound and grew toward it. Plants can hear. But it's deeper than that. Trees also produce sounds. When a tree is drought-stressed, the water columns inside its trunk, the xylem vessels that transport water from roots to leaves occasionally break, forming air bubbles in a process called cavitation. When this happens, the tree makes a sound. Scientists have recorded it. It's an ultrasonic click, too high-pitched for human ears, but it's there. A thirsty tree clicking in distress, a sound only insects and microphones can detect. What if I told you that a forest in drought sounds like popcorn popping, thousands of tiny ultrasonic clicks as water columns break in thousands of trees? It's a symphony of stress you can't hear, playing all around you. But the sounds you can hear are equally profound. In 2017, acoustic ecologist Dr. Gordon Hempton identified what he calls 1 square inch of silence, a spot in the Hoh rainforest in Washington state where for brief periods there's no human-generated sound. No planes overhead, no distant cars, no electronic hum. Just wind, birds, insects, and the sound of your own breath. Dr. Hempton measured something remarkable. In that silence, you can hear sounds from over a mile away. A branch breaking in the distance sounds crisp and clear. The acoustic clarity of an ancient forest is something humans rarely experience anymore. We live in a constant bath of white noise air conditioners, traffic, electronics humming at 60 hertz, and we don't even realize we've forgotten what real quiet sounds like. Think of it like this. Silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the presence of sounds that matter. In a forest, you hear meaningful sounds, a bird signaling territory, wind moving through leaves, each sound conveying information. In a city, you hear meaningless sounds, random mechanical noise that your brain has to filter out constantly. That filtering exhausts you. This is why forest sounds are used in sleep apps, white noise machines, meditation tracks. Your nervous system recognizes those sounds as safe. For hundreds of thousands of years, those sounds, wind in leaves, bird calls, flowing water, meant you were in a safe place with food, water, and shelter. Your ancestors who felt relaxed in that environment survived. Your ancestors who felt anxious in that environment didn't. You inherited the nervous system of the ones who found forests peaceful. There's a Japanese word, mori no ko, the voice of the forest. It's the totality of sound in a forest ecosystem, the layered combination of wind, birds, insects, and leaves. Studies show that listening to mori no ko reduces rumination, that endless loop of worrying thoughts that keeps you awake. Your mind stops spinning because it's listening to something older, something that matters more than your worries. Tonight, as you fall asleep, you might be listening to recorded forest sounds, or you might be in silence. Either way, imagine you're in that 1 square inch of silence in the Hoh rainforest. Every sound you hear is meaningful. Every sound matters. And gradually, your thoughts become like those sounds, fewer, slower, more spacious. The silence between thoughts growing wider, deeper, until you drift away entirely. Now we're going to explore something that sounds mystical, but is actually hard neuroscience. The forest inside your brain. And understanding this might be the most profound thing you take away from tonight. In 2015, Dr. Gregory Bratman at Stanford University ran an experiment. He took people for a 90-minute walk, some in a forest, others along a busy road. Afterwards, he put them in an fMR, a machine, and scanned their brains. What he found was startling. The people who walked in the forest showed decreased activity in the subgenual prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rumination, the negative thought loops that characterize depression and anxiety. The forest didn't just make them feel better. It physically changed their brain activity, switching off the neural circuits of worry. And the effect lasted for hours afterward. But here's where it gets really mind-bending. Your brain, it turns out, is structurally similar to a forest. I mentioned earlier that both have fractal patterns. But it goes deeper than that. Your 86 billion neurons are connected by trillions of synapses, forming networks that look eerily similar to the mycorrhizal networks connecting trees. Information flows through your brain the same way nutrients flow through a forest along pathways, through hubs, via networks that reorganize themselves based on use. Dr. Peter Wohlleben pointed out something profound. When a tree is cut down, the surrounding trees don't just lose a neighbor, they lose part of their network. The forest actually becomes less intelligent, less able to respond to threats. The same thing happens when you lose neurons or synaptic connections. The network degrades. But forests can regenerate, can soak in your brain. This is called neuroplasticity, and it's one of the most hopeful discoveries in modern neuroscience. Your brain can grow new connections, strengthen pathways, reorganize itself. And one of the most powerful triggers for neuroplasticity is novel experience, especially in nature. Think of it like this. When you walk the same route every day, think the same thoughts, do the same routine, you're reinforcing the same neural pathways, like walking the same trail through a forest until you wear a rut in the ground. But when you enter an actual forest, with its unpredictable terrain, its novel sights and sounds, your brain has to create new pathways, new connections. The forest forces your brain to grow. This is why forest therapy, which originated in Japan and has spread worldwide, is now being used to treat PTSD, depression, and anxiety. It's not just relaxing, it's literally rewiring your brain away from pathological patterns. Here's something that will shift your nighttime thinking. Trees dream. Well, not exactly dreams, but something analogous. In 2016, researchers in Austria used laser scanning to measure trees throughout the night. They found that trees' branches droop at night and rise in the morning in a cycle that can't be explained by photosynthesis alone, since it happens even in complete darkness. Trees have a circadian rhythm, a sleep cycle. The trees are resting, just like you. And when you rest, your brain does something extraordinary. During deep sleep, your brain's glymphatic system activates essentially, a cleaning system that flushes out toxins and metabolic waste products. Your neurons shrink slightly, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to flow between them, washing away the detritus of the day's thinking. Forests do something similar. At night, when photosynthesis stops, trees shift to different metabolic processes, moving nutrients, repairing damage, preparing for tomorrow. The forest is processing the day, just like your brain. So as you drift off tonight, you're joining a planetary rhythm. Every tree, every forest, every living thing with a circadian clock, all settling into the darkness together. You're not alone in sleep. The forests are sleeping with you. Let me take you deeper into the underground internet I mentioned earlier, because the full picture is almost unbelievable. What Dr. Suzanne Simmer discovered about forest networks has revolutionized ecology, and the implications will change how you understand intelligence itself. Here's the basic mechanism. Mycorrhizal fungi attach to tree roots. The fungi receive sugars from the tree photosynthetic energy, essentially. In return, the fungi's thread-like hyphae spread through the soil, vastly extending the tree's reach, gathering water and nutrients the roots alone could never access. It's a trade, energy for resources. But the fungal network connects multiple trees. And once trees are connected, they can exchange resources through the fungal intermediary. It's like a tree version of the internet, except instead of information, they're trading actual physical resources: carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, water. In 2016, Dr. Simard published findings that sound impossible. She used radioactive carbon isotopes to trace sugar movement through a forest. She found that a single mother tree can be connected to hundreds of other trees. In one growing season, that mother tree was sharing enough sugar to keep shaded seedlings alive. Without that support, those seedlings would have died. But here's what should stop you in your tracks. The mother tree was sharing preferentially with her own offspring. Somehow, through chemistry we don't fully understand, she recognizes her own genetic offspring and sends them more resources. Trees have kin recognition. What if I told you that when a mother tree is dying attacked by insects, dying of disease, or being cut down, she sends a surge of nutrients to neighboring trees, especially her offspring? It's like a will, a final act of giving everything she has left to the next generation. Trees have something that looks remarkably like love. Dr. Simard worked with Dr. Kevin Byler, who mapped an entire network in a Douglas fir forest in British Columbia. They found that the biggest, oldest trees, the Heb trees, could be connected to hundreds of others, forming the critical nodes of the network. When they simulated removing those hub trees from the network, the entire system became fragmented and unstable. Think of it like this. Old trees are like the servers and routers of the forest internet. Young trees are like new users, just getting connected. And the mycorrhizal fungi are the cables and wireless signals connecting everything. The forest is literally a community-wide network, and it's been operating for hundreds of millions of years, longer than our internet. But the network doesn't just share resources, it shares information. When a tree is attacked by insects, it releases chemical signals that travel through the network. Other trees detect these signals and begin producing defensive compounds before they're even attacked. The forest is warning itself. In 2013, researchers found that these signals can be surprisingly specific. A tree attacked by caterpillars sends different signals than a tree attacked by beetles. Other trees respond differently to each signal, producing the exact defensive compounds needed for that specific threat. The forest has a sophisticated communication system with a vocabulary. Here's what will keep you thinking as you fall asleep. Some trees appear to be dishonest. Some trees take more from the network than they give back. Some send false alarm signals that trigger other trees to waste energy on unnecessary defenses, giving the dishonest tree a competitive advantage. There are cheaters in the forest network, just like there are cheaters in human society. But the network continues because cooperation offers advantages that cheating can't match. A connected forest is more resilient to disease, drought, and disturbance than isolated trees. The trees that cooperate, on average, survive better than the trees that don't. Evolution favors community. As you close your eyes tonight, picture yourself as part of a network connected to family, friends, community, humanity. Just like the trees, you're stronger together than alone. Just like the trees, you're sharing resources you don't even realize, ideas, emotions, support. You're a node in a human network that works by the same principles as the Wood Wide Web. Now let's think about something that might seem sad, but is actually deeply comforting. What happens to forests over vast stretches of time, and what that teaches us about endings and beginnings. The oldest fossil forests are 385 million years old, from the Devonian period. Those early forests were nothing like today's forests. They were made of plants called Archaeopteris, which looked like a cross between a fern and a tree. But here's what's remarkable. Those ancient forests already had symbiotic relationships with fungi. The Wood Wide Web is 385 million years old. Cooperation is older than almost everything else we recognize about forests. Fast forward to 250 million years ago, the Permian extinction, the worst mass extinction in Earth's history. 96% of all marine species died. 70% of land vertebrates died. The forests were devastated, reduced to almost nothing. The planet was a barren wasteland. But forests came back. Within a few million years, which is fast in geological time, forests regenerated. Not the same forests, not the same species, but forests nonetheless. The pattern reasserted itself because forests are evolutionarily stable. They work, they persist. Dr. Jennifer McElwain, a paleobotanist at Trinity College Dublin, studies fossil forests to understand how plants respond to climate change. What she's found is sobering and hopeful. Trees can adapt to dramatic environmental changes, but it takes time, thousands of years, sometimes millions. Individual trees die, but the forest as a system survives by evolution, by adaptation, by the slow grinding gears of natural selection. Think of it like this. You, individually, are temporary. Every cell in your body will be replaced multiple times in your life. Your thoughts, your identity, your memories, all of it exists temporarily in the pattern of neurons in your brain. But the pattern persists even as the physical substrate changes. You're not the atoms, you're the pattern. Forests are the same. Individual trees die, but the forest pattern continues, the relationships, the networks, the ecosystem. A forest is not a collection of trees. It's a pattern that manifests through trees. Now think about the far future. Scientists predict that Earth will remain habitable for another billion years or so before the sun gets too hot. What will forests look like in 500 million years? We can't know. They'll have evolved into forms we can't imagine. But unless something catastrophic happens, forests will still exist because the pattern works. Here's what's comforting about deep time. Your anxieties, your problems, your entire civilization, all of it is a tiny blip in the pattern. Not unimportant, but not permanent either. The forests were here before humans, and they'll be here after us. There's something incredibly peaceful about that perspective. When you can't sleep because you're worried about something, a deadline, a relationship, a mistake you made, think about the forest at the end of time. Picture a forest 300 million years from now, filled with trees descended from trees that don't exist yet, solving problems that haven't occurred yet, thriving in conditions we can't imagine. All your worries are temporary patterns in temporary minds. The deeper patterns, cooperation, growth, adaptation, community, those continue. Dr. Simard tells a story about a dying forest she studied. The trees were infested with bark beetles, and many were already dead. It seemed like an ending, a tragedy. But when she looked closer, she found seedlings thriving in the gaps left by dead trees, nourished by the nutrients released from decaying wood, connected to the still living elders through the underground network. The dead trees were feeding the next generation. Death was transformation, not ending. As you drift towards sleep, imagine your thoughts as leaves falling from a tree. Each thought drops away, decomposing, returning to the soil to nourish tomorrow's growth. The thoughts are temporary. The pattern, the awareness that has thoughts that continues. You can let go. The forest teaches us how to let go. Now let's return to something deeply practical. The actual biochemistry of why forests heal you. Understanding the mechanism makes it more powerful, not less. I mentioned phytoncides earlier, the organic compounds trees emit. But let me be more specific about what they do in your body, because it's remarkable. Phytoncides include compounds like alpha-pinene and limonene, which you might recognize as sense pine and citrus, respectively. When you breathe these in, they enter your bloodstream through your lungs. Once in your bloodstream, they do several things. First, they reduce your sympathetic nervous system activity, the fight or flight response. Simultaneously, they increase parasympathetic activity, the rest and digest response, measurably. Dr. Ching Lai measured this with heart rate variability monitors. Forest air literally shifts your nervous system from stressed to relaxed. But there's more. Those same phytoncides increase natural killer cell activity for up to 30 days after a forest visit. NK cells are part of your innate immune system. They patrol your body looking for virus-infected cells and tumor cells, and they destroy them on contact. Forest air makes you better at fighting cancer and infections for a month. In 2011, Dr. Lai ran a study where he brought people to a forest for 3 days. Their NK cell activity increased by 50%. But here's the stunning part. When he brought the forest to them, had them sleep in a hotel room with essential oils containing phytoncides, they got similar results. The healing isn't mystical. It's chemical. It's real. But other compounds matter too. Negative ions, oxygen atoms with an extra electron, are abundant near moving water and in forests. When you breathe negative ions, they increase serotonin in your brain, improving mood and reducing anxiety. This is why you feel peaceful near waterfalls, rivers, or after rain in a forest. The air itself is medicating you. Think of it like this. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans evolved breathing forest air rich in phytoncides and negative ions. Your biochemistry is calibrated to that chemical environment. Modern indoor air recycled through HVAC systems, depleted of negative ions, containing VOCs from furniture and paint. That's a new environment your body isn't designed for. You're not sick. You're just in the wrong environment. This is why hospital rooms with views of trees have patients who recover faster, need less pain medication, and have fewer complications than rooms facing parking lots. A study by Dr. Roger Ulrich in 1984 found that gallbladder surgery patients with a view of trees were discharged almost a day earlier and required fewer pain medications than patients whose rooms faced a brick wall. Just seeing trees heals you. The mechanism seems to involve cortisol, your stress hormone. When you're chronically stressed, your cortisol remains elevated, which suppresses your immune system, increases inflammation, disrupts sleep, impairs memory, and damages your hippocampus over time. Forest exposure dramatically reduces cortisol levels within 15 minutes, consistently, measurably. But there's a chemical story happening underground too. Soil bacteria particularly, Mycobacterium vaccae, have been shown to increase serotonin in the brain when you're exposed to them. Literally, getting your hands dirty in forest soil can improve your mood for neurochemical reasons. There's a reason gardening is therapeutic. You're exposing yourself to soil bacteria that evolution has shaped to work beneficially with mammalian immune systems. Here's what should fascinate you as you fall asleep. The forest is a pharmacy. Every breath, every sight, every touch is delivering compounds that heal you, compounds your body recognizes and knows how to use because they've been part of your environment for your entire evolutionary history. You don't just appreciate forests aesthetically. You need them biochemically. Tonight, even if you're not in a forest, you can visualize one. Remarkably, even imagining a forest vividly picturing trees, hearing wind in leaves, smelling pine activates similar neural pathways as actually being there. Your brain can't completely distinguish between vivid imagination and reality. So as you picture a forest now, your brain is already beginning to respond as if you're there, releasing the same calming neurotransmitters, activating the same restful patterns. Let's shift into something more philosophical now, something about meaning. Humans have always seen forests as more than just trees. Throughout history, across cultures, forests have been symbols, and understanding why reveals something profound about human consciousness. In nearly every ancient culture, forests were sacred. The Druids worshipped in groves of oak. Ancient Greeks believed forests were home to gods and spirits, dryads in the trees, fauns in the clearings. Japanese Shinto recognized forests as dwelling places of kami, spirits inhabiting natural features. The sacred groves of India, the forbidden forests of European folklore, the mystical woods in countless fairy tales forests have always been places where the veil between worlds grows thin. Why? What is it about forests that makes us project meaning onto them? Dr. Gordon Oriens, an evolutionary biologist, proposed the savanna hypothesis in the 1980s. He argued that humans evolved in African savannas, grasslands with scattered trees, and were therefore instinctively attracted to that landscape. But there's a competing theory about forests. Dr. John Falk and John Balling proposed that humans actually prefer forests with certain specific characteristics: semi-open canopies that allow visibility, clear understory allowing movement, presence of water, and varied topography. These preferences are remarkably consistent across cultures, including cultures that never experienced African savannas. What both theories agree on is this: landscapes aren't neutral to us. We have deep, instinctive responses to certain environments because those responses helped our ancestors survive. A landscape that made you feel safe, that made you want to explore and settle there. If it was actually safe and had resources, you survived. If not, you didn't. Your emotional response to landscapes is inherited from ancestors who survived by feeling the right things in the right places. But forests mean more than safety. They're where we go for transformation. Think about stories. Little Red Riding Hood enters the forest and encounters danger and wisdom. Dante begins the Divine Comedy lost in a dark forest, symbolic of spiritual confusion. The hero's journey often begins by entering the forest, a place of trial, discovery, and transformation. Carl Jung, the psychologist, saw forests as symbols of the unconscious mind, dark, deep, full of hidden things, both dangerous and wonderful. When you enter a forest in a story, you're entering the unknown parts of yourself. Think of it like this. A city is what humans have built. It represents civilization, consciousness, order. A forest is what was here before us, and will be hereafter. It represents nature, the unconscious, chaos. To enter a forest is to leave the human-made world and enter something older and deeper. That's why it's frightening and exciting. That's why it transforms you. But here's a modern twist on this ancient pattern. We've learned that forests aren't chaotic at all. They're incredibly ordered, just by different rules than cities. The chaos of nature is actually sophisticated self-organization. What we called wilderness was actually carefully managed by indigenous peoples for thousands of years. What looks random is actually fractal patterns. What seems disordered is actually complex equilibrium. Maybe the forest isn't the unconscious after all. Maybe it's a different kind of consciousness, distributed, networked, operating on different timescales and priorities than individual human minds, but conscious nonetheless. Dr. Stefano Mancuso, an Italian botanist, argues that forests exhibit swarm intelligence, collective decision-making without centralized control, similar to ant colonies or beehives. No single tree is in charge, but the forest as a whole responds adaptively to threats and opportunities. It's conscious, but not the way you're conscious. It's intelligent, but not the way you're intelligent. As you fall asleep, consider this. Maybe you don't go to forests to escape consciousness. Maybe you go there to encounter a different form of consciousness, one that reminds you that your individual human awareness is one possibility among many. The forest consciousness, slow, distributed, patient, ancient, has things to teach the fast, centralized, impatient, modern human mind. And maybe that's why children's stories set transformation in forests. It's not about encountering your unconscious. It's about encountering a way of being that's fundamentally different from human default mode, and being changed by that encounter. Now I need to tell you something difficult, but I promise there's hope in it. The forests are in trouble, and understanding the trouble is part of understanding forests completely. But the story doesn't end in despair. Since 1990, the world has lost 178 million hectares of forest, an area larger than Libya. That's about 10 million hectares per year, though the rate has been decreasing slightly in recent years. The Amazon, which I mentioned produces 20% of Earth's oxygen, has lost about 17% of its forest cover in the last 50 years. When a forest is cut down, it doesn't just disappear. The carbon stored in those trees gets released into the atmosphere, accelerating climate change. Dr. Thomas Crowther at AID Zurich led a study in 2015 that produced a number that shocked everyone. Earth has 3.04 trillion trees. That sounds like a lot, but it's about half the number that existed before human civilization. We've cut down roughly 3 trillion trees, half the forests on Earth. But here's where the story gets complicated in interesting ways. Some forests are expanding. In parts of Europe and North America, forest cover is increasing as abandoned farmland reverts to forest. China has planted billions of trees in an effort to combat desertification. The story isn't simple destruction. It's transformation, relocation, change. And forests are adapting. Dr. Sally Aitken at the University of British Columbia studies how trees respond to climate change. She's found that some tree populations are evolving measurably individuals with genetic traits suited to warmer, drier conditions are surviving better and passing on those traits. Evolution is happening in real time, faster than scientists expected. Think of it like this. The forests aren't passively experiencing climate change. They're responding, adapting, fighting back. Some are losing, yes, but some are winning. The forests are teaching us something about resilience. In 2019, a global study found that restoring forests could capture 205 billion tons of carbon, about two-thirds of all the carbon humans have released since the Industrial Revolution. Forest restoration isn't just nice for wildlife. It's potentially the most powerful tool we have against climate change. And people are responding. In Ethiopia, 350 million trees were planted in a single day in 2019, a world record. In India, a village holds the record for fastest tree planting. 66,000 people planted 50 million trees in 24 hours. Pakistan's billion-tree tsunami exceeded its goal and is continuing. Reforestation is accelerating globally. But here's what I find most hopeful, and it comes back to the network. Dr. Simard's work on mother trees has changed forestry practice. Companies and governments are now realizing that clear-cutting and replanting the standard practice for decades doesn't work well because it destroys the mycorrhizal networks. Young trees planted on clear-cut land struggle without the network, without the mother trees to support them. New forestry practices now retain some old trees during logging, preserving network integrity. Some companies are implementing gap-cutting, small clearings instead of large ones, keeping the forest network functional. The science is changing the practice. As you drift off tonight, hold this thought. Yes, the forests are in crisis. But forests have survived 5 mass extinction events. They've survived continent splitting, ice ages, volcanic winters, and asteroid impacts. They've been here for 385 million years. They're not fragile. They're resilient in ways we're only beginning to understand. And humans, for all our destruction, are also part of the forest story now. We're the first species that can choose to help, can understand the networks and support them, can plant not just trees, but relationships, not just organisms, but ecosystems. We're not just the problem. We might also be part of the solution. Now let's bring this closer to home, literally inside your body. Because you are, in a very real sense, a walking forest, and understanding this will change how you see yourself. Your body contains about 30 trillion human cells, but it also contains about 39 trillion bacterial cells. You're outnumbered by your own microbiome. Those bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms living in and on you form an ecosystem as complex as any forest. They communicate, compete, cooperate, form networks. You're not an individual. You're an ecosystem. Your gut microbiome, specifically, behaves remarkably like a forest soil ecosystem. Different species occupy different niches. Some break down food, like fungi breaking down dead wood. Some produce nutrients your body can't make, like nitrogen-fixing bacteria in soil. Some defend against invaders, like trees producing antifungal compounds. The parallels are stunning. Dr. Rob Knight, a microbiome researcher at UC San Diego, has shown that your microbiome diversity correlates with your health. More diversity generally means better health, just like diverse forests are more resilient than monocultures. When you take antibiotics, you're essentially clear-cutting your internal forest. Sometimes necessary, but it has consequences. The ecosystem takes time to recover, and sometimes it recovers differently than before, with different species dominant. But here's where it gets really interesting. Your microbiome affects your brain. The gut-brain axis, the communication pathway between your digestive system and your brain, is mediated partly by the microbiome. Certain gut bacteria produce neurotransmitters. Some produce GABA, which calms your brain. Some produce serotonin, which regulates mood. About 90% of your body's serotonin is produced in your gut, much of it by bacteria. Think of it like this. Your mood, your thoughts, your emotions, they're not just produced by your brain. They're influenced by an ecosystem of trillions of organisms living in your digestive system. When you eat, you're feeding not just yourself, but a forest of microorganisms that, in turn, feed you compounds that shape your consciousness. You're not even fully in control of your own mind. You're a democracy of organisms, making collective decisions. And just like forests, your microbiome has a memory. Researchers have found that your microbiome composition is influenced by childhood experiences, diet history, stress, and antibiotics you took years ago. Your internal ecosystem remembers its past and responds accordingly to new conditions. But there's an even deeper parallel. Your body's cells cooperate through chemical signaling networks, just like trees in a forest. Your neurons form networks that look like mycorrhizal networks. Your circulatory system branches, fractally like tree roots and tree branches. Your lungs branch fractally. Your kidneys have fractal filtering structures. You are built with the same patterns as forests, because forests and bodies are both solutions to the same problems. How to move resources efficiently, how to maximize surface area, how to build resilience through redundancy and networking. Dr. Jeffrey West, a physicist at the Santa Fe Institute, discovered universal scaling laws that apply to organisms, cities, and ecosystems. Whether you're looking at a mouse or an elephant, a village or a metropolis, a bush or a redwood, certain mathematical relationships hold. Energy use scales predictably with size. Lifespan scales predictably. Network efficiency scales predictably. You personally follow the same mathematical laws as forests. Here's the truly mind-bending part. Your thoughts might follow forest patterns too. Ideas don't exist in isolation. They're networked, connected, influencing each other. Some ideas are like hub trees, connected to many others. Some are like seedlings, new and vulnerable. Your mind is an ecosystem of ideas, and it follows ecological rules. Good ideas spread like successful trees. Bad ideas die out like maladapted species. Your worldview is a forest of beliefs, constantly growing, dying, adapting. As you fall asleep tonight, recognize that the boundary between you and the forest is less clear than you thought. You're not separate from nature. You're built from the same patterns, following the same rules, made of the same atoms, connected in the same ways. When you breathe out carbon dioxide, trees breathe it in. When trees breathe out oxygen, you breathe it in. You're in a relationship with the forests, a continuous exchange, a conversation in atoms that's been going on for your entire life and will continue after you're gone. You're not just in nature. You are nature human-shaped. Let's spend these minutes thinking about what happens in forests, specifically at night, because it's different from daytime, and it's what you're doing, now entering the darkness, settling into rest. In daylight, forests are about photosynthesis, growth, competition for light. But at night, the forest shifts. Photosynthesis stops. The trees aren't making energy anymore, they're using it. They're respiring, just like you, breathing in oxygen and breathing out carbon dioxide. At night, you and the trees are doing the same thing, metabolically synchronized. But many things wake up at night. Owls hunt on silent wings. Their feathers have evolved specialized structures that dampen sound, making them nearly undetectable. Moths emerge, navigating by scent and the polarization of moonlight. Bats echolocate, filling the air with ultrasonic calls you can't hear, building sonic maps of the forest in real time. The mycorrhizal network doesn't sleep. Nutrients continue flowing through fungal highways, connecting tree to tree. In some ways, the network is more active at night because there's less competition from photosynthesis-related processes. The forest is having its deepest conversations in the darkness. Dr. Daniel Chamovitz, in his book, What a Plant Knows, describes how trees track day and night not just by light, but by temperature cycles, humidity changes, and even the Earth's magnetic field. Trees know it's night through multiple redundant systems, the same way you know it's night not just because it's dark, but because it feels different, sounds different, smells different. Some trees do remarkable things at night. The leaves of many trees change position, a phenomenon called nyctinicity. Leaves that were spread wide to catch light during the day fold or droop at night, conserving water and energy. It looks like sleep, and in some metabolic ways, it is. Think of it like this. A forest at night is like a city at night. The surface activity decreases, fewer birds, less photosynthesis, but deeper processes continue. Maintenance happens. Repairs are made. The infrastructure that supports daytime activity is being tended. Night isn't absence. It's a different presence. For humans, forests at night trigger ancient fears. For most of human evolution, we were prey as well as predators. Darkness in forests meant vulnerability to leopards, lions, bears, wolves. Your fear of the dark forest is ancestral memory encoded in your nervous system. But that same forest that frightened your ancestors was also home. The tribe gathered around fires in forest clearings. The darkness held dangers, yes, but also community, stories, safety in numbers. There's a reason humans are diurnal active during the day, sleeping at night. Your circadian rhythm, controlled by the suprachiasmatic nucleus in your hypothalamus, is synchronized to the day-night cycle by light entering your eyes. But artificial light disrupts this. You can be indoors under bright lights at midnight, and your brain gets confused signals. This is partly why modern humans sleep poorly. We've lost synchronization with the natural light cycle that ruled life for billions of years. But here's something beautiful. One of the treatments for sleep disorders is camping. Seriously. Dr. Kenneth, right at the University of Colorado Boulder, ran a study where he took people camping for a week with no artificial light-only campfires and natural darkness. After 1 week, everyone's circadian rhythm had synchronized to the natural day-night cycle. They fell asleep earlier, woke up easier, felt more rested. The forest reset their internal clocks. At night, forests also produce different compounds than during the day. Some plants release scent molecules at night to attract nighttime pollinators. Some release compounds to defend against nocturnal herbivores. The chemistry of the forest shifts with the light. And there's something spiritual about this that many cultures have recognized. Darkness isn't evil. It's restoration. It's the time when the forest and you repair damage, consolidate learning, and prepare for tomorrow. Night is as essential as day. Rest is as essential as activity. As you sink into sleep now, imagine you're a tree at night. Your leaves have folded. Your growth has paused. But beneath the surface, your roots are active. Your network is pulsing with nutrients. Your systems are repairing themselves. You're not doing nothing. You're doing the essential invisible work that makes tomorrow possible. The forest is dark now. The owls are hunting. The trees are breathing. And you're joining them, entering the darkness not as escape, but as necessary renewal. We're nearing the end of our journey tonight, so let's bring everything together and find meaning in all these facts about forests. Because facts alone don't help you sleep, understanding does. Connection does. Here's what you've learned tonight. Forests are intelligent, networked communities where individuals cooperate and compete, remember the past and prepare for the future, communicate through chemical signals and underground networks, and exhibit behaviors that challenge our assumptions about consciousness and individuality. But more than that, you've learned that you're not separate from this story. The patterns in forests appear in your body, your brain, your life. A peace you feel in forests isn't aesthetic preference, it's homecoming. Your biology recognizes forest patterns because you're built with the same principles. Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer, a botanist and member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation, writes about forests with a perspective that integrates indigenous knowledge and modern science. She points out something profound. In many indigenous languages, plants aren't referred to with the pronoun it. They're he or she, or special pronouns reserved for living things. The language recognizes them as beings, not objects. Modern science is slowly arriving at what indigenous peoples have known for millennia. Forests are alive in ways that deserve the vocabulary of relationship, not resource. Trees are beings. Forests are communities. And humans are part of that community, not separate from it. Think about what this means for your life. You spend most of your time in human-built environments, buildings, cars, cities. These environments are optimized for certain things: efficiency, productivity, commerce. But they're not optimized for you as a biological organism. Your body, your nervous system, your consciousness, these evolved in forests. The environment you're optimized for still exists. It's waiting for you. This is why forest therapy works. Why nature prescriptions doctors, literally prescribing time in nature, are becoming common in many countries. Why hospital recovery times decrease with views of trees. You're not broken. Your environment is just wrong for you. But you can't live in a forest, most likely. You have responsibilities, relationships, work. Modern life pulls you into cities and buildings. So what do you do with this knowledge? Here's what I want you to take away. You can bring forest patterns into your life. You can seek out trees on your lunch break. You can keep plants in your home. They're not just decoration, they're connection to the larger pattern. You can open windows and breathe outdoor air. You can walk on earth instead of concrete when possible. You can look at fractal tree images, ferns, coastlines, knowing your brain finds them restful. You can also bring forest principles into your life. Forests teach cooperation and competition in balance. They teach long-term thinking. They teach that individual success is tied to community health. They teach that communication and connection create resilience. They teach that death isn't ending, but transformation that feeds new life. Maybe the most important thing forests teach is patience. A tree grows slowly. A forest changes over centuries. But the growth is real. The change is real. You don't need to rush. You have time. More time than you think. Here's something that might help when you're anxious. Remember the mother tree sending nutrients to her offspring even as she's dying. Remember that trees who experience drought pass that wisdom to their seeds. Remember that forests survive extinction events and ice ages. Remember that you're connected to a pattern 385 million years old, a pattern that will continue long after you're gone. You're not just a person living a life. You're a temporary manifestation of a pattern, the pattern of consciousness, of awareness, of living matter organizing itself. The atoms in your body were once in stars, then in oceans, then in trees, then in animals, and now briefly in you, and they'll move on to other forms after you. You're not the atoms. You're the pattern they make right now. And the pattern of you is connected to all other patterns. The patterns in forests, in rivers, in storms, in galaxies. You're not isolated. You're a thread in an incomprehensibly vast tapestry. Dr. Carl Sagan famously said, "We are made of star stuff, but we're also made of forest stuff, ocean stuff, wind stuff." Every breath connects you to everything that has ever breathed. Every atom in your body has been recycled countless times through countless beings. You're not new. You're ancient matter in a new configuration. And when you die, which you will, which everyone does, your atoms will return to the cycle. Maybe some will become part of a tree. Maybe that tree will produce oxygen that someone else breathes. Maybe that person will stand in a forest one day, feeling peace, not knowing they're breathing atoms that were once you. This isn't sad. This is continuity. This is the pattern continuing. You're not struggling alone through a meaningless existence. You're part of something so vast and ancient and beautiful that it transcends words. The forests know this. They've always known this. Now, as we come to the end, let's just be quiet together. Let the words slow down. Let the concepts settle. Let everything we've explored sink into the deeper parts of your mind, while your conscious mind releases its grip and lets sleep come. Picture a forest now. Your forest. Maybe it's a place you've been, or maybe it's imagined, but it's yours. You're standing at the edge, looking in. The light is soft late afternoon, maybe, or early morning. The kind of light that makes everything glow. You step in. The air is different immediately. Cooler, richer. You can smell earth and bark and the faint sweetness of flowers you can't see. The sounds of the outside world fade behind you. All you hear now is wind moving through leaves, the occasional bird call, your own footsteps soft on the forest floor. You're walking deeper in. No path, just the way your feet find between trees. And as you walk, you notice the trees. Each one is an individual. This one has rough bark, that one smooth. This one is young and straight. That one is ancient and twisted. But they're all connected. You know that now. Beneath your feet, the network is pulsing, sharing resources, sharing information. You can feel the age here. These trees have been growing since before you were born. They'll be growing after you're gone. There's no hurry here, no deadline, no schedule. Just the slow, patient growth of living things following patterns older than memory. You find a spot where the light filters through the canopy in a particular way, making a pool of soft green gold light on the ground. You sit down, your back against a tree. It's solid, strong. It holds you. And sitting here, you feel your breathing slow to match the rhythm of the forest. The forest breathes too. During the day, breathing in carbon dioxide, breathing out oxygen. At night, breathing in oxygen, breathing out carbon dioxide, just like you. You're breathing together. Your heartbeat slows. The tension in your shoulders releases. You're not thinking anymore about the things you have to do, the worries you carry. Not because you're forcing them away, but because they're just less important here. The forest puts them in perspective. The trees don't worry. They just grow. You notice small things now. An ant walking across your shoe, carrying something twice its size. A spider web between branches, pearled with moisture, geometric perfection. A mushroom growing from fallen bark, part of the great decomposition and renewal that makes new life possible. Everything is connected. Everything is part of the pattern, including you, especially you. The light is fading now, evening coming. You notice the tree's leaves beginning to shift, folding slightly, entering their night position. The birds are quieting. Different sounds emerging insects. Frogs somewhere near water you can't see. The wind changing tone in the cooling air. You could get up. You could leave. But you don't. You stay. You lean back against your tree. You let the darkness come. The stars appear above, visible through gaps in the canopy. The same stars that shone on the first forests 385 million years ago. The same stars that will shine on forests long after you're gone. Continuity, connection, pattern. You close your eyes. Not because you can't see, but because you don't need to anymore. You can feel the forest around you, the presence of the trees, the movement of the network beneath the ground, the slow respiration of thousands of living things all breathing together. You're safe here. You've always been safe here. This is where you're from, where every human is from. The forest is your ancestor, your home, your future. Your thoughts are slowing now, spacing out, like trees in a clearing. Lots of space between them. Comfortable space. Each thought can just be. No need to hold on to it. No need to push it away. Just let it exist for a moment, and then release it, like a leaf falling from a branch. Falling slowly, spiraling down, settling on the forest floor where it will decompose and feed new growth. Another thought arises, falls, settles. Another, falls, settles. Spaces between thoughts getting longer, wider, deeper. You're not thinking about the forest anymore. You're not thinking about anything. You're just being, like a tree, just existing, just breathing, just present in this moment, this endless moment, this eternal now. The forest is dark around you. The trees are resting, their leaves folded, their growth paused. But the network beneath is active, moving nutrients, making repairs, preparing for tomorrow. And you're doing the same. Your conscious mind resting, but deeper processes active, healing, consolidating, preparing. You're a tree now, your roots going deep, your branches reaching up, connected to everything, part of the pattern, ancient and temporary, individual and community, yourself and everything else. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. The network pulses beneath you. The stars turn above you. And you're here, between earth and sky, between yesterday and tomorrow, between thought and no thought, between waking and sleeping.